All right, I think we'll get started now. So hello everyone. Good morning or good afternoon, wherever you are joining today. Glad that you can make it here for this really exciting webinar that we're going to be discussing with a very special guest here. So just in terms of introductions, my name is Njeri Karanja, and I'm the founder of Rwandapreneur, and Rwandapreneur is a platform to connect, amplify, and to support entrepreneurs that are committed to Rwanda's socioeconomic growth and development. And so we're delighted to have a special guest, Njeri Karanja, joining us from BC to be our special guest here for this session. But before I get into it, this is really going to be a really informal chat discussion, just to hear what Minnie has been up to over these last, few months, a few years. She could share a little bit about, her recent entrepreneurship journey, and tips for those that are looking to invest or do business on the continent, as well as sort of transitioning into this exciting space of travel tourism. But before I get into it, Minnie or Njeri, how are you doing?
Hi, Monday. I am doing very well, thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Good, good, good.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I just have a few questions. Like this is really just I love the fact that we're doing this as like an open style conversation. And so, really want to make this interactive so if people have, questions or comments, you could, write them in the chat, or even when we open things up, feel free to ask a question. Um, but maybe just starting off from the top, really, you have a really impressive bio and your background, but I've known Minnie for quite a number of years. I think, since the time that you first arrived to Canada a few years ago, originally, from Kenya, but having deep roots in the continent. And so you've been involved in so many different sort of aspects of development, marketing, of entrepreneurship. And so maybe just to kick things off, maybe you could just share with everyone just a little bit about yourself, um, just to let everyone know, who you are.
Certainly. My name, Minnie Njeri Karanja. Um, I have begun the practice of using my middle name, Njeri, more often, which connects to my heritage. Njeri is the name that I share with my grandmother. So it's very special to me. I was born and raised in Kenya, in a small village outside of Nairobi called Ndero. And coming to Canada, I came to Canada 4 years ago, and my background professionally is working in the nonprofit sector and international development. So prior to launching into entrepreneurship, I worked in those sectors for about 10 to 12 years. Here in Toronto, I worked with a nonprofit organization that was advocating for Black Canadians um, in different sectors, justice, education, um, social economic empowerment. So that is my background. My role there was Director, Government Relations and Policy, which gave me an opportunity to really understand at a very high level the issues that Black Canadians were facing, trying to navigate everyday life and institutions too. So that's trying to comprise all that I have been doing and all that I am. Um, at my heart, I'm a purpose-driven person. So everything that I've done and the initiatives that I am involved in um, are ones that, really center my purpose and trying to create impact for people in different ways. Yeah.
Great, great. No, it's really impressive just, your path and your journey and the different experiences that you're drawing on, um, like your lived experiences. And so, that's definitely great to hear. Um, and on a really cool note, I think how we really connected when we first I guess, got introduced by a mutual friend of ours, um, was that you had been to Rwanda, or that you were living in Rwanda and working in Rwanda for many years. And then I was very intrigued. I'm like, oh, like, okay, tell me more, right? And so, and then just hearing you talk about your time and your experience there, working around, I was like, wow, this is really incredible. And so, you really sort of adopted that phrase of like friend of Rwanda, right? And so, so that's cool. And so, definitely have like enjoyed our time connecting and just seeing your evolution and your growth, and really now coming full circle, to really just talk about your journey, specifically, and you touched on it. You've been involved in the various different sectors, not for profit, development, um, and you recently made a pivot and a change, um, and you got into the world of entrepreneurship and looking to, uh, I guess, to support, people that are interested in traveling and in the travel space. And so I'm wondering, just to kick things off, if you could, tell us a bit about, your startup journey in Africa, what led you to pursue entrepreneurship on the continent. On the call here today, look, we may have several different people either based on the continent or outside in the diaspora, or people of African descent. They've been hearing about, different opportunities, but, for you being in the diaspora, and what made you, make that jump to pursue these opportunities there.
Yeah, and truly, I am a friend of Rwanda. And interesting enough, I felt like my career in international development really kicked off in Rwanda and has been nurtured by Rwanda. So, yes, very proud and very personally connected to that land. In terms of how I started my entrepreneurship journey, this started last year. So, having moved to North America, and lived here for a while, I was starting to feel like my identity as an African was constantly being challenged, reframed, and in ways that felt were untrue to me and very limiting in terms of my identity. So I wanted to step away from that and be reminded in a way of what it meant to be an African. So to me, that meant going back to Africa and connecting with the land, with the people, and reminding myself that there is so much more to me than, the box of black that we often find ourselves into as immigrants coming from Africa. We come with so much knowledge about who we are beyond our skin color in terms of the experience and how people perceive us. And we find ourselves being put together in this black, quote unquote, black box that takes so many diversities of peoples and individuals and just put them together in a way that is untrue. So I went out for a search for that. So I traveled to Africa in the summer of last year, and I wanted to have that immersive experience. Um, and it occurred to me that if I was feeling like this after being in North America for a while, the other people might be craving for the same experience. And I did I guess, a reasonable thing. I started a travel company that would give people experiences of Africa in a very immersive and meaningful way, that will help them to even understand their own identity better. So I feel that that's how my journey started. That's when it started. And it's been a journey. When I came back, I certainly felt different about my identity and how I understood it and how I wanted people to understand it. At the beginning, I said that I'm using my middle name more because I feel empowered in that. I feel connected to my heritage when I'm being addressed in that name. So it's been a journey really of search for identity, if I could say that I'm hoping other people will appreciate. And even those that are they're not of African descent, but are curious about how to travel to Africa, how to have a deeper understanding of the African experience beyond what the Western media feeds them. This is for that purpose. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's powerful, and just picking up on what you just mentioned about changing that narrative, right? Like we hear that a lot, um, and then we sometimes think, or maybe I sometimes think, like how could it be done, right? And so, whether it's through our buying power, our purchasing power, in terms of maybe that could be part of it in terms of reclaiming, um, you know, that which was taken from us and sort of rebuilding. So it's cool to hear just how you've done some serious like reflection, and from that looking to then uh, contribute to social economic development, right, in whatever part of the world that you're in. But I guess in this particular case, being a contest. So no, that's really inspiring. And I guess so as you transition into this space, um, you know, just recently, because I believe this was just what like we're talking about like 2023, or like we're not talking about you've been building this for a while, but I've talked to many different various founders and entrepreneurs, and it's a hustle, right? It's a hustle, especially when you're bootstrapping, and you are you have the vision, you have what you're shooting for, but it's still a grind, and it sounds like for you it's just been fairly recent that you've transitioned. So I'm wondering if you could share maybe some quick learning lessons that you've learned along the way, um, and maybe tips for those that are maybe also pondering these next steps of maybe they're wanting to get their feet wet within entrepreneurship. But what has these last few months been for you, as you've been building this business, building this brand, and in terms of these next steps?
Yeah, this is a very recent transition. Yes, we're talking about 2023, beginning of 2023. I stepped away from my role, from a wonderful full-time job, which I thought was having an impact in many ways, personally and in the community. So my transition is a bit unique because I didn't leave my full-time employment to launch into entrepreneurship. I was in Toronto at the time, and in my search of, what I wanted my next phase of life to look like, if I could call it a phase, I moved from Toronto to British Columbia, um, because I wanted a change of environment. So the initial idea was to move to BC and continue working for my employer, but that was not possible. And I spent the first couple of months trying to say, okay, I'm gonna look for another job because I really enjoyed what I was doing and I wanted to continue to do the important advocacy work that I was doing. Um, but in the meantime, that takes a while, making connections with people, um, figuring out what roles are best fit for you. And all the while I was struggling about, my Black identity and getting more and more uncomfortable about it as when you've worked for a long time and you have a career. And I found that my identity was very closely related, almost intertwined with the titles that I had. And I found myself all of a sudden without that title. And it was a moment of, who am I without my title, without my career? So it presented an opportunity to have those deeper reflections about my identity. And I told you that's when I made the decision to move to Africa to explore that. So my transition into entrepreneurship was um, not that intentional in terms of leaving full-time employment as most people do. Are like, oh, I want to stop a 9 to 5 and get into entrepreneurship. Mine was my own personal search, and wanting to bring other people to what I had discovered I could do. So having got into that, I was prepared. I knew that it would take me a while to get employment, so I was prepared financially. that I would be able to survive in Canada for a while without a job. And I said, instead of, paying my rent, hundreds, a lot of money, thousands of it, I'm going to use this to travel and build my business. So that's a bit more about how I transition into entrepreneurship. And the lessons there is that passion has kept me. I was very passionate about what I discovered and what I wanted my company to do. So beginnings are difficult, as anyone can imagine. So my passion has kept me. I'm constantly reminded of why I started this. I've that drives me in times when I'm like, oh, this is so hard. This partnership fell through. I'm having so many things to do. My to-do list is so long. You have administrative work that you don't quite enjoy. For me, I enjoy the parts where I design these tours. I dream up what the tours are gonna be. So passion is important when you're going into entrepreneurship because that is what is going to keep you grounded. Um, yeah, and a passion that is connected to your purpose. So I have found that the passion that I have for travel to Africa is connected to my purpose. And that has helped me to constantly ground myself, find a reason to wake up in the morning, which I know a lot of people in that are in 9 to 5 and are wanting to transition are always looking for that freedom. So that is one. And I would say the other thing is be prepared to learn. Be prepared to learn. I launched into entrepreneurship in a completely interesting industry that I'd never thought of. I'm a traveler, but I'd never thought of working in that industry. So I've had a very steep learning curve. I've had to be patient with myself and really humble to reach out for help. Um, I think that's one of the things is having a quote unquote expert in my former industry and coming to a new industry where I needed a lot of people to train me and to teach me um, how to jump the ropes, how to move forward, how to sell, how to position yourself. So having that humility to learn and courage that if you have learned something before in your life, you can learn again, that it's all you always have an opportunity to learn. So I feel like those are the lessons that I'm picking up and are really helping me on this journey.
Wow, wow, those some great insights, some good practical advice that you've shared in this, journey, fairly recent journey, but great to hear. I hear the passion, and you mentioned passion, and you mentioned finding purpose and wanting that to be intertwined, is, um, like with what you're going to be pursuing. Um, so I'm wondering if we can maybe talk about your company and talk about what you've actually launched. So it's called Celebrate Africa Tours. Um, and so you mentioned last year in 2023, you went on a exploration to the continent, after you transitioned from your 9 to 5 and, you wanted to, I guess, to check it out for yourselves, right? Many times, sometimes as Africans, uh, even we as Africans, even I would say I'll put myself in the boat. I hardly have traveled the continent. If any time I'm traveling, it's just traveling back home, native country there, Rwanda, maybe a little bit surrounding East Africa, but not as much. So I'm wondering if you could share about, what was your journey like last year in exploring all these different countries that you went to, um, and what you've learned along the way, and with this topic that we're talking about now, redefining travel in Africa. So what were some insights, and what was that journey, that exploration like, when visiting these different countries last year?
Yeah, it was amazing in many ways, being in places that I had not been before and grounding too. And I felt very proud that we again the frustration that I had of being put of all Africans or peoples of African descent being put in this box of black. That it is a helpful word that enabled us to talk about our common struggle in terms of addressing anti-Black racism and dismantling structures of white supremacy. So in a way, like it further made me feel so frustrated because I was seeing all these diverse cultures and peoples and ways of being that I was like blown away that we are such a diverse people, so rich in culture and heritage, and that needs to be celebrated. So when I got my name, Celebrate Africa, and I love it so much because it reminds me what I'm doing. I'm celebrating Africa. I'm celebrating our diversities. And I want other people to see that, to come and enjoy that diversity. So a lot of African, you're right, what you said, a lot of Africans actually, you'd be surprised that not so many people in Africa travel to other African countries. Honestly, I had only been to Rwanda, Uganda, just the neighboring places, but now I have an opportunity to go to as far as Namibia. I'm so excited about that. Cote d'Ivoire is not very far, but it's such an interesting and vibrant place, and there's so much commonalities too in our diversities that I think we need to embrace that as Africans. I'm so proud to see the African leaders starting to recognize just how much potential there is if we could open up our borders, not require Africans to have visas to visit other African countries, and particularly proud of Rwanda because my experience going back to Rwanda last year was amazing. You don't need a visa, you just show up and you get your visa on arrival. Very easy process. So if we could have that happening in other African countries, that would be amazing. And what I'm building is that's the purpose of it. It's an opportunity to bring people to see Africa in a way that they've never seen before. Um, the tours that I'm creating are designed to have immersive experiences. I think a lot of people in the Western world, when they think of Africa, thanks to National Geographic, amazing, they think about the big five safaris, going to see the wildlife. We have a rich wildlife, and that's amazing. We want people to come and enjoy the wildlife. But beyond that, we want people to come and have experiences that are transformative. As I mentioned, I worked in international development um, and here in Canada in the nonprofit sector, talking about how to change structures of oppression for Black people that are based on narratives that are untrue about the African experience, about our capacities and our intelligence. So, as much as this struggle that we have in the Western world, is about the structures. It's also about people. People make up these structures. These structures were put in place by people and they continue to be upheld by people. So I want people to think about the work that we do as logic as well as hard work. So I'm doing the hard work. That's what I've transitioned into. I want people to go to Africa, go to Tanzania, for instance. We have an amazing cultural and heritage tour that includes safari in 2024. Um, and yes, you will have a beautiful safari experience, but you will meet communities. You're going to have opportunities to see the everyday life, people that are waking up in the morning and are so passionate about what they're doing and they are making a difference in their lives and in the lives of their communities. And I want particularly white people to come and see this and be challenged in their mind about what they've thought or what they've been trained to think of Africans. We're not lazy. We are very hardworking people. So that's very important. And trying to answer your question in many ways, that's what I'm creating. That's what I want the impact to be. And really that would be what I would call success, having as many people come onto these tours and have that transformative experience where they are challenging themselves, they're challenging their friends, they're challenging their colleagues in North America that wait, this is not how to address this. You're wrong about what you think about Africans, what you think about their experience is and all these biases that people have been fed. Yeah.
I know that's a lot of truth there. There's a lot of truth, and I think it's important for us to show, what the real Africa looks like, um, to our own community sometimes, and even to people outside our community, and friends and allies, that have an interest and curiosity, uh, and showing them, not just, what the image that they have about the continent from like maybe 30 years ago, right? And like you said, like there's been lots of change, there's been innovation, there's been renewal. Yes, obviously there's issues anywhere that you go, but uh, there is a lot to look forward to. Um, and I really like what you mentioned about, just creating like that impact, that generational impact, right? I think of uh, the impact that we, could have, because tourism in many parts of the region are a big driver of the economy, of the GDP, right? Um, and you're seeing it as, more and more through, countries opening up uh, to, big festivals, to sports tourism, uh, to so many facets of tourism, right? So now recently I'm seeing tourism in a whole different way. Like I'm seeing like how, Rwanda is putting on and really investing a lot in that sports tourism and building those infrastructures and, having these big festivals and inviting the world to come and see. And so I think, there's lots of opportunities to be tapped into that. So I'm wondering, and you touched on this, in terms of, how do we build a sustainable and impactful tourism sector. So, but I'm wondering from your perspective, what does it mean? Like, how do we really build a sustainable and impactful tourism sector in Africa? Um, that could go from generation to generation, and so, um, how is Celebrate Africa Tours looking to address this?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question, Imanze. Sustainability is important. As you mentioned, there's a lot of buzz right now about African countries really wanting to leverage these opportunities. And certainly it is an economic opportunity because you look at tourism sector contribution of countries' GDP in Africa is tremendous. So there's a real opportunity economically for Africans here to leverage and grow their economies and create all sorts of empowerment for youth, for women, for children. So sustainability to me starts with communities, how travel companies relate with communities, and even how governments relate with communities. There's a lot of cultural heritage, physical structures of that hold our histories that need to be preserved. So making sure that communities are at the center of this, the communities feel respected, the communities are feeling engaged in this and economically benefiting themselves. So I love, again, I've spent a lot of time in Rwanda, so it's always a reference point for me. When I think about the gorilla trekking and the communities living around you know, the mountains in Musanze, the communities are very engaged, and again, I feel very proud about how Rwanda is growing its tourism by allowing communities to take part in this. They are economically benefiting from that. They are getting engaged. They get employment when visitors go to the gorilla trekking. They are being employed as guides and as porters. So they're seeing that direct benefit, and therefore their willingness to protect that environment is heightened. So I think putting communities first and center in terms of preserving these places and the culture too is key. And respecting those communities, there's a beautiful mural on in Zanzibar at the square, Joe Square. It's a community square where people in the evening will come together, share tea and stories. And there's something that's written on the wall that says, "Think global, but respect local." So again, this is encouraging and really calling out the travel companies, international travel companies. When you bring your visitors to these places, make sure that you're being responsible enough to work with communities to understand what is respectful behavior. Um, it's it's interesting and sad that we have to talk about these things because for a long time people have not had this sort of exposure to learn different cultures. So what is seen as respectful it is different. So it's important when you're traveling to these places that visitors are aware of what is respectful behavior. How are you making sure that the people that you're visiting feel respected in the way that you're interacting with them? So that is on the community side. The other side, which I want to bring up in terms of sustainability, is how to make sure that the youth are getting involved. So my company, what we're doing is that we're working with travel companies that are owned and operated by youth. Certainly, they have a lot of energy that they're bringing, a lot of ideas. So, I mean, I'm sitting here in North America and I'm collaborating with them. They know better than I do those places. And, I hold a vision of what I would like the rest of the world, North America, to see when they come there. So it's a collaboration between these two groups of people. So making sure that the youth are feeling very involved and they're gaining economically. And that's how I'm seeing this being sustainable because, like every other industry, the older generation reaches a point and, there's a need for so-called new blood to come in and come up with innovative ideas on how to make sure that the industry is growing. So yeah, we're working with youth and we're working with women too. We know, as we say in Africa, that you educate a woman and you educate a village, right? So and it goes the same way in terms of empowerment. So we want to make sure that women are empowered, women are involved. In Tanzania, I'm working with a wonderful company that is actually owned by a woman and operated by her. It's been going on for a while. So she has a good track record. She's competent in what she's offering, and we have a very good partnership. So I'm very proud to have these partnerships continue, and to make sure that women are being empowered and of course taking back the benefits back to communities and to their children and families. So for me, it's about communities, it's about empowering of key groups, women and youth. That's how I see sustainability um, being grounded in what I'm doing.
Guys, no, for sure. Empowering communities is a big thing, and um, looks like you you get it, and sometimes maybe others on the outside may not get that aspect. They get the business side. It's almost like when you're doing business on continent, like by nature, like there, you know, there is some type of community, um, socioeconomic community benefit, right? And realizing that, yeah, like it's not just uh, something that just, you get in, you get out, and then that's it, right? So, um, yeah, just thinking about that, and thanks for bringing up, that topic, and it's good that that's being infused within your business.
Yeah,
Um,
and actually a
yeah.
follow-up to that, when you say it's not about coming in and going out, what I
Mm,
do hope is that when people do make these visits, that their minds are going to be open to other opportunities.
mm, mm.
You're traveling like, oh, actually, I saw this in Tanzania. I think I might come back again because I want to explore that idea. Or you make a friendship. We hope people are going to come on these tours and make friendships with the locals. And they're like, oh, yeah, I've made a friend. I'll come back next year and check on them. Or you visited this school and you come back, you're like, oh, I'm still thinking about that school. How can I be of value? What impact can I have? So I'm really hoping that these tours are just not opportunities for a one-off travel visit. You're like, oh, take the bus. I've been to Africa. I saw this and this. But we hope that long-term opportunities to travel back and forth are going to be opened up. Yeah.
Oh, for sure. No, that would be great. So yeah, gonna be opening up for questions. So if people have questions, feel free to type a question there in the chat, or you can even raise your hand, and we'll get into some questions. Um, I do, before we get into that, I do see a question here in the chat, but wanted to ask something that you mentioned earlier in terms of your journey there in Rwanda, and and how you know, had a very strong connection to Rwanda, and now being a friend of Rwanda. I wonder like what attracted you to do business in Rwanda, and in fact set up operations for your company, in Rwanda. So I'm wondering maybe if you could share a little bit about that.
Yeah, Rwanda, I think I felt some certain level of comfort just having lived in the country for a while. I knew what to expect when I went into that process. Of course, Rwanda has branded itself very well and it's communicated very clearly about what it's like to do business there. So I knew it would take me just a day to register my business. Actually, now it's a couple of hours, but I had some technical issues and I needed to go into their offices, run the development board, and I got someone to help me. So I registered my company in just, I don't know, less than 8 hours, which is a really wonderful experience. I don't know how many other African countries you would have that smooth experience. So the ease of just taking off, knowing that I didn't have a lot of time to be there to go through this legal process of setting up a company. I knew that I wanted that ease and I would get that for Rwanda. Um, and the opportunities for my industry um, are are limitless in Rwanda. So I wanted to leverage that, and it seemed a very natural place for me to start. So my sort of my base for my country, for my company in Africa is in Rwanda. And yeah, it's I would say just the ease of doing business is what attracted me to it, and my own comfort around knowing what to expect, certainly contributed to making that decision.
That's great to hear that, you're able to quickly get your business off the ground, and hearing it directly from you, and that's great. And yeah, definitely wanting to bring a whole ecosystem of people, that founders and entrepreneurs of small businesses that are interested in doing business, in Rwanda, and using Rwanda as like your base, right? As your proof of concept base to then go out to the region, right? And so uh, and the continent as a whole. And so that's great. And definitely something I've been hearing a lot over the last few years is, really having a visa-free Africa. And so, if we get, more countries on board with that, and I think, a lot of, government leaders, presidents have been kind of outspoken recently over the last, few years, a few months. And so, that'll be good that if we have that in place. So yeah, turning to any questions or any comments. So yeah, feel free to type in your question. Or I see someone with a hand up. Zito, yeah, go ahead. I see your comment here in the chat, but go ahead. You can also come off mute and
Uh,
raise your question.
yeah, so I have a question. So putting on one of the hats that I've kind of put on a shelf for a moment now, with my media company. One of the goals that I've had for a long time, I would say at least for the last 7 to 10 years, is being able to travel across Africa and document historical journeys of our people and how they moved from east to west. My question, and maybe if you've looked into this, Mini, and I'm sure you have because you're trying to capture the entire continent. As of now, what do you see in terms of getting across Africa? What are the, like, in terms of percentage, maybe, or numbers of countries? What are the countries you would say are safe to travel through? What are the countries that maybe we still have a few years to be able to get that that the freedom of movement? Yeah, like, because I obviously like one of the areas that I'm looking at especially is the north side of the continent and the southern side, Zimbabwe and South Africa, but also on the north in the Arabia side. What is, based on what you're looking at, what are the countries or percentages of countries that you could say maybe it's not safe now, but you could maybe down the road you could be able to open those flow of movement? I don't know if it's this question is relevant. I just thought I asked because that's one of the like really I made a comment in the chat saying that my goal is to visit all of the 55 nations in the next 10 years. It's mostly to tell those stories in a way that is captures everybody's culture and where they are heading in the next 50 to 100 years. So I feel like it would not be complete if I was to go one place and not the other.
Yeah, that's a great question, Kizito, and I think it's a question that is on the minds of many people. You just asked it, and I love your idea, the project that you have in mind in terms of documenting, because that's one of the challenges that we have in terms of preserving our cultural heritage and our histories. Is that a lot of the way that these things have been passed on to us has been word of mouth through stories, and as the world changes and there's need for documenting and preserving this, that's really needed. In terms of, security and places that are safe to travel, certainly there are places that I'm not taking visitors at the moment, particularly on the northern side. Ethiopia is one of them, as well as, like place like in Egypt and mostly on the northern part. I find that when you go on our website, we have about 24 countries, and these are the countries where I felt that at the moment, those are countries um that are safe, the ease of traveling there. They have this culture of welcoming people, and they've been in tourism industry for a very long time. They've developed that. But other places, Lebanon, just not very certain about, how things are politically, and things change all the time. So that's the situation at the moment, but in future it could be a different story. And I know, again, like I mentioned, Ethiopia, it's not all of Ethiopia, but so sometimes there's a situation on other side of Ethiopia, um, but not other areas. If I'm being clear, that sometimes when people say a country is not safe, there's an over representation of really what is happening that is not, and that is untrue. So I mean, like visiting Ethiopia, it's completely okay right now to visit Ethiopia. They're just places that I would be like cautious about traveling farther out, if that makes sense. So yeah.
Thank you for answering that question. I definitely would be following up with you because I'm interested in knowing this. And again, I'll go to the website. I see Manzi shared it. I would love to look at it, and I'll keep an eye out to it for the next few years. And hopefully there is an opportunity for partnership in as we move to do this in the next we'll reach out to you.
Yes, thank you, Manzi. Oh,
Great,
hopefully, Manzi.
thanks. Thank you, Gazito, for that question and for your response. Looks like we have another hand. I think Denise has her hand up. Yeah, feel free. Just come off mute.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Nini, I love what you're doing. It's just beautiful. I love the way you are centering all the important facets of tourism, working with youth and thinking about it as a mutual kind of exchange. So thank you for what you are doing. And I too love Rwanda like you do. And my question for you is, given your focus on youth and youth development, I'm wondering, what is your strategy for university and college student engagement? The gap year situation in universities is a little bit more popular in American universities, but there are oftentimes in Canadian universities where students travel. And I think I like the philosophy that you have that would probably make your tours distinct from others. That it might be, I'm just wondering, do you do outreach with universities and those that set up travel abroad programs to maybe even work with the same youth that you're engaging with for the tourism, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm just wondering what has been your strategy here for that? Because I think, and you did touch on it, but I think I just want to emphasize, yes, it's important for white people writ large who are also heterogeneous to see the continent. But I think it's really important for those in the diaspora to see it. And there were striking similarities, me being of Caribbean descent, in the way that maybe Jamaicans actually don't go to Antigua and Antiguans don't go to St. Lucia, the ways that there's many blockages within the Caribbean, that there's a lot of travel. And from what I'm hearing, there's also blockages from travel within the continent. So I'm just thinking from a diasporic perspective, it's really great too to like even just focus on those outside of the continent who might not be white. So those were my comments, but thank you for what you're doing, and I'm so happy to see you're successful.
Oh, thank you, Denise. I'm so glad that you joined this session today. And thank you so much for your comments. Yes, working with the universities and colleges to create opportunities to travel to Africa, that is on my mind. Um, yeah, certainly that's on my mind. I haven't developed a full strategy around that, but I'm starting to make connections with these institutions because yeah, certainly there's an opportunity to offer this to the youth here. As well as, like a lot of institutions, universities have an African studies department and, wanting to bring some practicality into that. So that is what I'm looking to do in the future, that I'm going to work with these universities, institutions through whatever it is that they're having in terms of programs for Africa and really others that are not taking those programs to have the opportunity to visit the continent. And I love the idea of, youth working with other youth. That's a great one. I'm going to think more about how to make that happen. The other point around now I forget the other point, Denise. Could you remind
It's
me?
not important. It's not important. No,
No,
no, no.
no,
It's
it
just a
is
comment.
important.
I was just babbling.
No, no, it is very important. And now I remember it. You were talking about having these opportunities presented to um other non-white people. And I know that in my language and in my communication, I always want to make sure that I'm saying this because the systems and the structures that we come up against, in addressing anti-Black racism are white supremacy structure and that culture of um yeah of trying to break that narrative is important. So yeah, I'm really hoping that this will be an opportunity that others will come up to take outside of that, other allies from other cultures and races, because this is everyone's business to know the continent better. Yeah.
Thank you.
Great insights. Thank you for sharing that, Denise. Another hand here, Amina, would you like to share a question for Njeri? Hey there, Amina? Maybe you could type a question there in the chat. So while we're waiting for that, yeah, if anyone else has any additional questions, we're just coming to nearing the end of this conversation, but this has really been a really inspiring and insightful conversation. Hope everyone has learned a little bit about Njeri's journey and what she is building there on the continent. And so really want to leave these last few moments for Njeri just to share a little bit about what's upcoming for her and her company, Celebrate Africa Tours. I did put the link there in the chat. That's the official website. Really cool website. I like how it's all laid out. And, I remember back in the day, I used to go to, that store Flight Center, right? And I'd have to, look through like those books, even though like I've never actually, booked a package to them, but I always used to go to, that has to be like my favorite travel store and just go there and just like, wish and fantasize about what it'll be like to travel all across and the continent. But I always used to look at it. I'm like, okay, but they never have everything on the continent. If they do, it's maybe like one or two countries, or it's like super expensive or everything like that. So yeah, I like how you've laid out everything here on the website. So yeah, so in terms of next steps, contacts. So wondering if you could share, yeah, what upcoming trips are you planning for 2024 and beyond? How can people find out more information about these Africa tours? Any contact information, or there's a website there, any email, social media, and then finally, like, what final advice would you like to leave, or insights you'd like to leave with everyone here today?
Thank you, Imanzi. It's been a really wonderful conversation. I loved it. Yeah, so I laid out the website just to make sure that people are just, having these opportunities to dream about which way to be to go up to all these different countries. So what's coming up in 2024, we have 5 amazing tours, really amazing tours. I love them, and I can't wait to go on them. So we'll be starting off in Rwanda for the 10-day tour, gorilla trekking. Of course, we'll visit important sites as the genocide memorial sites, and we'll have a time with communities in the place a little bit outside of Kigali to have a conversation about healing. From that, we're going to head to Tanzania, where we'll be climbing Mount Kilimanjaro. And after that, we'll have a safari with other community cultural heritage activities included in that. And then we'll finish off Tanzania by going to Zanzibar. Wonderful beach. We'll be in Stone Town, learning about the culture there, as well as the important history that is connected to slavery, which a lot of people don't know that Zanzibar, there is that culture, there is that historical background with slavery and the Atlantic slave trade. Then we'll drop down to South Africa and finish it off there before coming back to Canada. So that is how this is looking like in 2024. Of course, if people can sign up for all of those tours for 1, welcome to do that. And if none of those countries are on your list, the other countries, I'm happy to have conversations about creating a package or a travel tour to any of the other destinations. Final thoughts are around entrepreneurship is to really take time. I would say to everybody on the call and those that are going to listen later is that take time to know your purpose. Take time to have clarity about what you want to invest your energy, your resources, financial and otherwise, including networks, and bring that back. So, yeah, really take time to know your purpose, live your purpose, enjoy your purpose, because when all is said and done, really your purpose is what's going to drive you, is what's going to help you to have that impact that you want to see. Yeah.
Awesome, amazing, Njeri. Really just want to thank you for just joining us here today, sharing about your journey, your authentic journey, and again, it sounds like it's still ongoing because we kind of feel like we haven't yet arrived, but it's awesome to hear what you're building and how the community can come alongside this journey that you're building, because it seems as if this is something that's much more bigger than yourself, and you're taking transformation of the communities on the continent. So that's awesome. Yeah, people, yeah, wanting this conversation to continue. So thank you everyone for tuning in. Not sure if Amina, if you're still there, or maybe I'll just pause there. Okay, no worries. But yeah, feel free to type any. Oh, Amina, yeah, did you want to say something?
Yeah, can I chip in?
Yes, I think we can hear you. Oh, okay, so maybe we could definitely
Okay,
connect.
my network is actually acting up, but can you hear me now?
Okay, yeah, yes, okay. Oh, okay.
Go ahead, Amina, if you can.
So, yeah, so we can't hear you. So, yeah, we'll connect offline. So yeah, Minnie has included her email in the chat. So if you do have any questions about any of the upcoming tour packages, feel free to reach out to her. We've included her website. We will be sending follow-up email with for feedback. As well as we'll be posting this up on our Rwandapreneur YouTube page shortly, so you'll be able to view this video later on. And in terms of our contacts at Rwandapreneur, so we'll definitely we'll provide our contacts. And yeah, if you're interested in continuing to come alongside our journey at Rwandapreneur, so we're all about again bringing the community together, connecting, amplifying, increasing global awareness of entrepreneurs that are committed to run their socioeconomic growth. And so one way to do this is through collaboration across, with our African, brothers and sisters that are doing phenomenal things. And so we definitely appreciate having Njeri here. So thank you very much. And we'll leave it open. Anyone has any last comments, thoughts, but we'll stop the recording here. But thank you all and hope you all have a good rest of the day.